Hello, everybody. The full crew is back. Luke, Ryan, San, here to discuss 2025 UFC, going to 2026, give our champ predictions. But boys, how we doing? It's been a long layoff.
It's been great.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
Yeah, it seems like you guys are real fucking enthusiastic and excited to see me, huh? But
yeah, I'm happy to get back to work after a fucking much-needed break, dude.
100%. And I was kind of thinking about the way to start off this podcast, just thinking about 2025, and a few things about the year really stuck out to me. It seemed to be the year of the double champ and the year of the best matchups possible just not being made, to be quite honest. Not to be real negative there, but when I really look at this year and the dominance of Merab Dvalishvili gets a little outshined just because he lost to Petr Yan that last week. But you really think about Ilia Topuria getting that second belt. You think about Islam Makhachev getting that second belt. And you think about John Jones not fighting Tom Aspinall. You think about Islam Makhachev not fighting Ilia Topuria. You think about Islam Makhachev not fighting Arman Tsarukyan, and you think about Arman Tsarukyan not fighting Ilia Topuria. And that's it. So it's a bit strange given how great of a year I thought it was. I just have a little bit of a sour taste in my mouth. But with all that being said, boys, I think it's time to get into this because there are some positives, and the first one of which being Male Fighter of the Year. And I know we're a bit split on this one. So I'm going to let you kick this one off. Who was your Male Fighter of 2025?
Yeah, I was really between putting this guy at Male Fighter of the Year or Comeback Fighter of the Year. But I think I landed on Male Fighter of the Year because he really deserves it. His comeback started, a year and a half, 2 years ago. I got Petr Yan, man. He started off the year beating a red hot Marcus McGee. I know everybody was really high on Marcus McGee. He was doing very well to start, before that first fight. He was a good prospect coming in. Obviously, not Petr Yan level as we found out, but he's a guy that we definitely had the doubts on that fight. It wasn't 100% Petr Yan's going to win that fight. I know I was with Petr there, but he started the year off beating that guy, and then he ended it by beating a seemingly invincible Merab Dvalishvili. A guy that we all picked against, a pick to win that fight. In Merab, got beat by Petr Yan. And I remember in the beginning of this year of last year, 2025, I think before we did our 2025 predictions and things like that. And I know I mentioned it a few times. If there's one guy that I think could beat Merab, it's Petr Yan because he can play his own game. And I know I got a little bit of pushback because it was a 45-50. But we in the first fight, but we saw just what type of fighter Petr Yan is. And I think his comeback in general, it's been a few years in the making now, but I think the comeback that he's been able to claw himself out of and into has been great. And I think he's more than deserving of Fighter of the Year. I thought about putting Josh Van here for that, but I think that title fight, kind of left a sour taste in my mouth, kind of tainted his year and his legacy. Not tainted his legacy, but tainted the way that he ended the year off a little bit for me. So that's why I didn't put him there. But I know one of you guys put him up there, but that's my case for Petr Yan. I really think he deserves it there.
Yeah, man, going off of Joshua Van, I actually did have Joshua Van as my Male Fighter of the Year. When you look back, I know it sounds weird, it might be a little controversial, like San said, given the way his last fight ended and his title, the way he got his belt against Pantoja, but I was going back and just looking. I was looking at this calendar year, but he also noted that he fought on December 7th of 2024. So if you really look at it, 366 days, he fought 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, won all of them, and just bounced back extremely well after his loss to Charles Johnson. Clawed his way back up. People were talking about, is he out of he might be washed because a lot of guys who lose to Charles Johnson don't really climb the ranks again after they lose to him. He's kind of that gatekeeper for the top 10 in that division. But he proved everyone wrong, came back, wins against Cody Durden, Ray Cerrulla, Bruno Silva, fights Brandon Royval on 2 weeks' notice, gets the Fight of the Year nod from the UFC after that fight, puts on an absolute show and an absolute war, and then comes back a few months later in December to get the belt off Pantoja. Obviously not the way he definitely wanted to win that, not the way the fans wanted to win it, but you got to give credit where credit's due. He had a hell of a year.
Yeah, I both of those guys I thought about when I was thinking about this one. I think I kind of probably went a little more basic. I'm going Islam here for my Male Fight of the Year, and really obviously only fought twice in 2025, one being Tamoy Kano subbing in late for Arman. So that fight not really putting too much pull in my mind. But I think the fact that Islam really set out to have a plan this year, said that he was going to go up. That's not an easy jump in weight. It's, 15 pounds versus the lower weight. It's only a 10-pound jump. He put the muscle on. And I think I don't know, I forget the consensus on this pod, but most of us had JDM in that fight. And I think the dominant performance just really, for me, he's the pound for pound number one. I think he had a great year, and I think that weight being added on, I know we saw with John Jones with the layoff. I think that really is holding value to me. I think all the guys that we mentioned are very, they're deserving in this award, but I'm going Islam. I think he continues it into 2026, and I think the dominant performance over JDM was what just did it for me at the high level.
Yeah, Luke, I think I might have been the only one on Islam in that fight, which I think is kind of wild looking back on it, because I don't know. I just didn't see, even though I had Islam, I still didn't think it was going to play out the way it did so dominantly. And Islam was on my mind there. Initially, I was going to go Petr Yan, to be quite honest. And then I was like, dude, he really did only win 2 fights in 2025. And one of which, Marcus McGee, I mean, we can call him a good prospect, but he's a 35-year-old that you know is never going to touch the top 5 of the division. He was ranked like, 12, 13 when they fought. I don't know, like that win over Merab was so fucking impressive that I almost want to give it to Petr, but I'm going to go with Van just because of the activity. Ryan, I thought you brought up some very good points. Sorry. Started choking a little bit, but Joshua Van's only one of 2 fighters to win 4 fights in 2025. Him and Ezekiel Costa were the 2. Very impressive. I will give it to Joshua Van as well. Now moving on, I think we have someone here, female fighter of the year, to no one's surprise. I don't know. Who wants to say it, boys? Luke, you want to say it? Valentina Shevchenko. There it is.
Yeah. I'll start it off just because I think we had a good back and forth on the pod for predicting the Wei Li fight. And Zach, you hit on every single point in that fight. Everyone here knows that Wei Li's, a great champ, but Shevchenko showed levels to it. So I'll let you go on. This is, I know, a girl you've been riding with for quite some time in these fights. So,
yeah, honestly, I'm just very impressed in which the way and how dominant Valentina Shevchenko was. And I don't think realistically there's any other way you can go. There's any other direction you can go with female fighter of the year here for 2025. If you just look at what she did, just the dominance against Manon Fiorot, and then the way in which she just really dominated Zhang Weili everywhere that fight went, just controlled her on the ground. Insanely impressive. And Zhang Weili, I think a lot of people were considering the pound for pound number 1 for women's fighters. And to do that to her is just damn impressive. And another thing I want to kind of point out about Valentina Shevchenko, while this doesn't necessarily pertain to 2025, it pertains to how good she is across weight classes, because she has some very close losses to Amanda Nunes up a weight class. And that is just crazy if you look at how big Amanda is. Valentina Shevchenko, well-deserved female fighter of the year. And I think we might spend some time talking about her a little bit later when we do our 2026 predictions. But moving on here, fight of the year for 2025. Ryan, I'll let you kick this one off. Who'd you give it to?
Yeah, for me, I mean, I don't know if the criteria for fight of the year means it has to go to decision, but I took one that ended in a finish, and that was Jiri Prochazka versus Khalil Rountree. I was just thinking back. I saw the list that some of you guys had on this, and I was like, and I saw what the UFC gave the nod to. But when I was watching that fight, I watched it back, and just how impressive it was, a comeback for Jiri. Down 2 rounds, starts biting down the mouthpiece and just refuses to give up, walks Khalil down and ends up finding that shovel left hook in round 3 that just drops Jiri face first, or not Jiri, drops Khalil Rountree face first into the canvas. It's an exciting fight overall. The other one I was kind of giving an honorable mention to is Iwo Berinchyk versus Ibo Aslan. What a hell of a debut for Iwo, I should say. That was an absolute dogfight. Both guys got dropped like 2 times within the span of a minute and a half, and then they just both put their heads down and just started swinging hooks until someone was dead, and Iwo got the nod there. But for me, I still give the nod to Jiri versus Rountree. I thought that fight was just a little more impressive because it lasted a little bit longer.
Adding a little bit of color onto that, Ryan, when we watched that Khalil Rountree versus Jiri Prochazka fight, you were the sole person in the room who was on Jiri Prochazka as well. So that had to have made that much more of an invigorating win right there.
But 100%.
That's all the color I had to add. Luke, on to you.
Yeah, I'm going Joshua Van versus Brandon Royval. I think that was the International Fight Week card, I believe. But that fight was just, I mean, it's what propelled Van from, I think, 14 or 15 to number 1. That was a dogfight. I looked up some stats. Both fighters land over 200 significant strikes. First time in UFC history, and total was 419. significant strikes for, between both of them, which is the first time in UFC history. So just a legendary fight. I know we talk sometimes about the lower weight class, especially flyweight, not having the power. But that fight was a perfect example of how crisp their striking is, and just super impressive. And yeah, that's one for me is going to be fight of the year.
Yeah, Ryan, I'm glad you touched on and you brought up and you had the Jiri Rountree fight in there. It's definitely one that came across my mind when I was thinking about fight of the year. I do have it in my list down the line, given our awards here. But for me, it just had to be that Josh Van. I'm right there with you, Luke. I think, 90% of the MMA world saw that fight and was like, damn, that's one of the best fights I've ever seen in my life. And just the reason I gave that over the Jiri Prochazka versus Rountree fight is that at no point was there one clear winner until the very last round when you saw Joshua Van drop Royval. So it was very back and forth. To me, it came out like a Robbie Lawler, Rory McDonald fight, if I'm recalling correctly. Probably the best fight in UFC history, in my opinion. But, they just didn't get bloody as that. Both guys were walking out of that cage, decently fine. But, the punches were flying. That's the vibe I got from that fight. And that's why I had to give it to Josh Van versus Brandon Royval. Hell of a fight.
Yeah, I actually went with Nazim Sadykhov versus Nicholas Motta. And part of the reason being there was the atmosphere around that fight, because you have Nazim Sadykhov going to Azerbaijan, where he's from, hometown. He's a big star there. The whole crowd's behind him, and then he just gets dropped early. And Nicholas Motta is just unleashing on him. The crowd's fucking silent. You have 70, 80 on-thrown punches, and just seeing in which the way Nazim Sadykhov was able to battle back through being hurt that badly and find the finish in round 2 and just seeing the crowd invigorated, I thought was fucking awesome. Nazim Sadykhov, I'm a big fan of as well. Sadly, he kind of got beat up in that last fight by Fursian. But beside the point, Nazim Sadykhov versus Nicholas Motta, that will be my fight of the year. Now moving forward, knockout of the year. Luke, you want to kick this one off for us?
Yeah, I'll kick it off. Definitely, looking at the other guys' picks, a little bit of a different direction. Mine's Lerone Murphy against Aaron Pico, the spinning elbow. Son, I think you might be on the similar card after this. I don't know. There's a couple that your guy has had this year. But I think just like everyone that I talked to was huge on Pico. Obviously, the wrestling background, coming over from another promotion. People really counted out Lerone Murphy in that fight, and that spinning elbow was perfection. He dropped him out cold. I think that was just one of the best knockouts I've ever seen in the UFC, since I've been a fan. And I really think it propelled Lerone Murphy, still kind of a underappreciated guy in the weight class. But I think we're going to see him fight for titles here to come as he gets further in his career, more into his prime. So I'm giving the nod to that one, Lerone Murphy.
Yeah, Luke, you got me red-handed, I guess. I do have Carlos Prates spinning KO on Geoff Neal. I was teetering between this one and the Aaron Pico KO or Lerone Murphy KO, I should say. But the reason I gave it to Carlos Prates is, well, I guess there's two reasons. One, when I really looked at the fight and I looked at the knockout, Aaron Pico, it was more a fuck up on Aaron Pico plus a Lerone Murphy spectacular timing there, rather than it was just one guy just absolutely dominated him. You saw Pico just absolutely just square up and just give his chin out and just stick it out for that spinning elbow to hit him right in the face. Carlos Prates, on the other hand, they're right in the middle of the canvas. He wasn't back down or anything. They're right in the middle. Carlos goes and just perfectly times it, perfectly places it, in the middle of a firefight against Geoff Neal, who has never been knocked out, if I'm not wrong, in the UFC. So not only does he get the KO on him, but it's, just beautifully timed and just right in the middle of the canvas for everybody to see, against a guy that, nobody's ever knocked out, and you get this absolute killer in Carlos Prates walking out there and doing that thing to him. So yeah, I got Carlos Prates KO, but definitely was on the fence between that one and the previous spinning elbow there.
Yeah, sticking with spins and fighting nerds, for me, I went with Mauricio Ruffy's spinning wheel kick over Bobby Green. I think for me, it was for the beginning of the year. I think that happened around March. It was when Pereira fought Ankalaev the first time. It was the first KO of the year for me where I actually stood up out of my seat, and it gave, I had a verbal reaction from it, and it just kind of has stuck with me since throughout the entire year watching UFC. And every time you see a Mauricio Ruffy fight, that highlight's always going to be there. I mean, they sent King Green out to the slaughter. They're expecting him to get a KO, but no one was expecting that. He just entered flow state, switched it up, spinning wheel kick, lights out, walk away KO. And I think that might have won KO of the year, if I'm not mistaken. But for me,
I
that
think
one
it
was
did.
just special.
I think it's very interesting comparing Carlos Prates and Lerone Murphy's knockouts and the strength of competition there, because I do think Aaron Pico is a lot higher level than Geoff Neal, to be honest. Like, I think Aaron Pico, skill for skill, like his ceiling's a lot higher. But that's a good point you made, Son. It is interesting because, I mean, Pico did set up the knockout in a sense, but like still landing that, the timing's insane. Like, when is Pico getting put out like that? I don't know, but my knockout of the year is actually going to be Ilia Topuria just flatlining Charles Oliveira. I think the
That was
implications
AI,
in it,
actually.
I think the implications, first off, in a title fight, going to become double champ, a guy who's never been put out cold like that, and he did it without breaking a fucking sweat. Like, I don't know. When he put out Charles, I sat there and was like, wow, this guy's never going to lose. He's the absolute man. That is legitimately all I thought. And while it's not as flashy as his other knockouts, just the spot it was in, you can't be on a bigger stage and perform any better than that. So that's why I had to give it to Ilia Topuria. Sorry, boys. I know it's a big Charles pod, but we
way to bring the mood down, man. Thanks. How am I gonna finish?
Yeah. And moving on, submission of the year. Son, you want to bring your own mood up here? Who'd you go with?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Actually, this is a sub that I'm stoked about. I think I mentioned it a few times before on the podcast, but for me, the submission of the year has to be Bahamondes' triangle choke on Jalin Turner this year. Jalin Turner, Jesus! All right, getting back in the swing of things. But yeah, it was just beautiful, man. It just the transition from the position they were in into the triangle choke kind of rolled right into it. It seemed like, Bahamondes was so good at doing it. It almost seemed like Jalin Turner rolled into it and kind of just accepted his fate. And then, obviously the fight went down like that. But, you got a guy in Bahamondes, just to set the stage a little bit, you got a guy in Bahamondes that is known to be a pretty slick striker. I mean, he's really good on the feet. The dude's, lengthy. He's a striker. He's like a Gary Machado, Carlos Prates, type of, slick striker like that. And he pulls out that triangle choke in the first round. And not only just, it comes out of nowhere. Not only that, but it's just perfectly set up. I mean, he rolls right into it, gets him right between the legs, and then, the rest was, on the scorecards, or I guess it wasn't on the scorecards. But yeah, to me, it was perfectly set up, perfectly executed. Definitely the sub of the year. That's one that got me stoked.
Sorry, I meant to mention this earlier when I went through knockout, but I wanted to shout out one other one, and that was Sergio Pettis in the PFL knocking out Magomedov with another spinning back elbow. And I'm not going to harp too much on this, but just the implications there was another big one because he was getting his ass whooped. But sorry for circling back to that. Ryan, go on.
If I'm not mistaken, that was on the same week too, or the week before that card that we had, two spinning elbows. So just a week of spinning elbow, man.
Yeah,
crazy. But Ryan, sorry.
Yeah, for me, I went a different route, and maybe not the most technical submission ever, but just in terms of how the fight went and the utter dominance on one side, I went with Anthony Hernandez's rear naked choke over Roman Dolidze. From the time the bell rang in the first round up until the fight was over, you just watched Fluffy absolutely dominate Roman Dolidze to the point where it almost was like he could have ended the fight anytime he wanted to, and he did it in such a way where it wasn't a technical, you didn't sync up the back, get a takedown. He just grabbed Roman Dolidze's neck, dragged him halfway across the octagon until he tapped, threw him on the ground, just walked off. The performance itself was spectacular. The submission was spectacular, and for me, that did it.
Yeah, I'm with you, Rye. Not going to add much there. I think just the aesthetic of the finish was just sick to me. I think it gave me John Jones versus, I think it was Loido Machado, right? Or Machida.
Yeah,
he dropped him. Where he dropped him in the guillotine against the cage. It gave me that vibe. And obviously, John Jones went to have a great career. And we're still waiting to see what Fluffy does next. So I think for me, it was just kind of Fluffy re-entering his name into the top, especially with that, emphasis on that, throwing him on the ground. It was awesome.
Yeah, that's the main one that kind of stuck out in my mind because that was just such a cold sub. And you don't see subs a lot of times that leave you like, Jesus fucking Christ, man. Like, that was wild. But I went with a little bit of a different direction here and a little cheeky Contender Series, Season 9, Week 10. my boy Wes Schultz, who we recently interviewed, or I guess I recently interviewed, out on the Around the Felt YouTube, by the way, check it out. But Wes Schultz with the Soloyev stretch, and there's only been like 4 of those in UFC history, I believe, maybe less. And as a wrestler, seeing someone submit someone in a spladle is just kind of wild because that's not something you see ever. And if that was on a typical card, he's probably walking out with a 50K bonus just due to the uniqueness of that sub. So I went with Wes Schultz in the Contender Series. But moving on, fellas, comeback fighter of the year, and there are some good ones here. San, you want to kick this one off? Who's your comeback fighter of 2025?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, it has to be Volkanovski, man. And I was excited that I was the only one that had this one on the list, if I'm not mistaken. Getting his belt back after a couple of tough losses to Islam, I think everyone, including myself, counted him out. I really didn't think he was going to get that belt back, especially with all these prospects. You got Diego Lopez, you got Lerone Murphy, you got, Evloev up there. You got all these exciting guys in that weight class that you expect to have the belt by the end of the year. But lo and behold, old man Volkanovski hops in there with Lopez and just beats him everywhere. A very dangerous Diego Lopez that is used to being in those firefights, exchanging one hit to take to hit him himself. And, Volkanovski used his head movement, used his hand speed, and just beat him straight up. I mean, there's no question about it. And don't get me wrong, Diego Lopez is easily one of my favorite fighters in the UFC right now. But I just didn't expect that fight to go that way. And I was very surprised at seeing Volkanovski get his belt back. In my mind, Diego would go on to win that fight, and then Volkanovski would go on to retire. But now we're talking about another Volkanovski title defense coming up soon, which is pretty crazy. So just getting your belt back at that age after the fights he went through, I think this definitely makes him comeback fighter of the year.
Yeah, for me, I was kind of in between. I like the Volkanovski pick. I saw that you had it on our docs on, so I went a little alternative route. Speaking of getting belt back, similar fashion, I went with Alex Pereira as comeback fighter of the year. As strange as it might sound, fights Magomed Ankalaev in March, looks like a shell of himself out there. Loses the decision. There was no question that he lost. It wasn't really even that competitive of a fight. And then to come back out in October after taking some much needed rest, it looked like the Alex Pereira of old. Gets him out in the first round in such a dominant performance, walks him down, doesn't lay off the gas whatsoever. And you just it reminded you of the Alex Pereira of 2024, the fighter of the year. For me, that sealed it. I was happy to see him get his belt back. There was also a lot of these implications. Is he going to move up to heavyweight, take some time to bulk? No, he came back, got his rematch, and did what he was supposed to do in the first one. So I give my nod to Alex Pereira.
Yeah, 2 good ones there. Son, I'm going to piggyback off of your male fighter of the year. I'm going Petr Yan for my comeback fighter of the year. Like you touched on, the comeback hasn't really just been this year. I'm just really the Merab fight, man. There's sometimes, and this happens, obviously we're fans of multiple sports, where there's the Rocky, the movie moment. And that's the vibe I got after the Petr Yan fight when he beat Merab with his son in there saying, I'm so proud of my dad, his wife crying. It was like a storybook moment. So I think it's just a disservice to Petr Yan if you don't give him an award on this show. And I think comeback is just as fitting as male fighter of the year. Only 2 wins in 2025. But the ability to get the one you lost back, and come back after, all he's been through, with the Sterling fights and, having to fight all the way back after losing to O'Malley, it really seems like the organization stacked against him. And yet we're sitting here on January 5th, and he holds the belt. So what a great story. I think everyone who watches the UFC is a Petr Yan fan.
Definitely. And those were all good ones. And I'm going to go a different direction. My comeback fighter of the year for 2025 was Benoit Saint Denis. BSD was coming off of back-to-back knockout TKO losses against Moicano and the one before that against Dustin Poirier. Comes into 2025 and was a guy who a lot of people were like, this guy might be fucked, right? Gets a cupcake to start the year against Preppa like he's a massive favorite, and then goes out there against Mauricio Ruffy and just fucked him up. Absolutely smothers him, submits him, then goes out there and fights Beneil Dariush, who just is coming off a win over Renato Moicano, who we saw dominate BSD, and goes out there and puts him away in 15 seconds. Quick night at the office. Now BSD's going into 2026, ranked 8th in the division. Would not be surprised to see BSD get a title shot in 2026. I think the UFC would like to push a little Frenchman to the top. And another thing to note, he's only one of 7 fighters to go 3-0 or better in 2025. 5 guys went 3-0, 2 guys went 4-0. So hats off to BSD. One hell of a comeback, my friend. And now moving on, Breakout Fighter of the Year. Another fun one here. Ryan, who was your breakout fighter of 2025?
Yeah, for me, I had to go with the new rookie, Quillin Scout out of the lightweight division. Starts off the year in February, coming off a Contender Series win in September, but starts the year off in February, faces Anshel Jubilee, and just walks out there, 19 seconds, knocks him out cold. Maybe a little bit of a controversial stoppage. Anshel Jubilee started to get up, but he was fighting the ref. He had no idea where he was. Comes back a couple months later in June, fights now Ashmuz. A little bit of a stinker. It went to a decision. It seemed like he was just trying to wait it out, get the decision. He was comfortable in there, not too much flash, and then ends the year off in October fighting Nasrat Haqparast, a guy who was heavily favored. Quillin Scout came out there. He was looking a little rough in the first 2 minutes of that fight, and then out of nowhere, perfect John Anik commentary timing again. His parents own a bakery, and the next thing you know, head kick, done. Nasrat Haqparast is on the floor or on the canvas, and Quillin Scout is now a superstar. And you see it everywhere. He got the bakery tattoo or whatever, like a cake tattooed on his foot with like the words bakery under it. And he's just riding it out. And he's gotten, he's launched, into that semi-superstar potential after that one. So I got to give the nod to Quillin Scout. A lot of people know him now.
If you are Nasrat Haqparast and you see that bakery tattoo on his foot, what are you thinking?
Probably go buy a loaf of bread.
That's ridiculous. All right, Luke.
Yeah, that's a good one. Definitely a fan, but I'm going a little bit different direction. I think you could kind of argue if it's breakout or not. He's kind of been on the scene. I'm going Michael Morales here. I think he really just cemented himself at the top of the division. 2 wins in 2025 against Gilbert Burns and Sean Brady, which I think many people thought Sean Brady, with the repertoire that he has and the elite wins he has in the UFC, was going to win that fight. And Michael Morales made very quick work of him. I think we're talking about him fighting next for the title. If not title eliminator, he's definitely in the category. Still a super young guy, young prospect. So I'm looking forward to see what he could do in this upcoming year. He's my breakout fighter for 2025.
Yeah, breakout fighter of the year. I think when I think about that title and that, award, I think, where you started in the beginning of the year and where you ended, really that, the growth you've had throughout the year and what you've been able to do in the span of 1 year. And I don't think there's one guy that really embodies breakout fighter of the year more than Josh Van. I mean, he started the year fighting a guy like Ray Saruya, who I don't think anybody's too high on. He's not even in the rankings. And if he is, he's pretty low down there. But starts the year off fighting Ray Saruya and ended up with a title fight. And now, unfortunately, due to unfortunate circumstances, has a belt. So to me, it's really just that the rate of growth he had in that year just really sticks out as breakout fighter of the year to me. Although, he has been a good prospect for a while now. After that loss to, was it Charles Johnson? You don't really know what to do with that guy. And then he just claws his way to the very top of the division, beats a guy, an amazing fighter in Brandon Royval, and then, goes and wins a title fight, although it was by, injury, he does end up with the belt around his waist. So, I just think he's skyrocketed, man. He's skyrocketed in ways that really we've only seen in this division because Pantoja was clearing everyone out. They kind of just had to bring guys up there, but he was the only guy to succeed. Although it was the way he got it, he got the belt. He is the champion now. And he started off fighting Ray Saruya in the beginning of the year, and now he's a champion. So, 4 fights later, he's a champ, or 3 fights later, he's the champ. So that's my guy for breakout fighter of the year. It has to be Josh Van.
I'm just looking at the UFC flyweight rankings, and I do not know how they snuck Loner Kavanaugh into the rankings, and that was more so perplexing me more than anything right now. Anyone know how they snuck Loner Kavanaugh into the fucking rankings? That makes no sense.
He's just nice, I guess. I don't know.
He's coming off getting.
He lost his first fight, didn't he? Yeah, he did.
He lost his last fight. He just got knocked out cold, and he hasn't beaten anyone ranked. But whatever. I'm completely going off topic here. Breakout Fighter of the Year. I was also on Quillin Scout. Ryan, you hit on every point. Let's move on. The Rookie of the Year. Another fun one here. Luke, do you want to tell us your 2025 Rookie of the Year?
Yeah, I might butcher his name, but I'm going Aiba Gutier. I think that's right. The Greek god himself. I think someone said he's 6'4", just an absolute mammoth of a man. And I think if you look at it, he stepped on the scene in 2024, won a Contender Series fight. He fought 3 times in 2025 and didn't make it past the first round. I think he is the boogeyman going into this year. I don't really know if obviously his wrestling and his grappling hasn't really been tested, so we'll see that. But Rookie of the Year, I think it's got to be Aiba, man. He is the guy to watch. I almost put it in for my pick to be the division's champ at the end of the year, and then I got calmed down a little bit. I got a little fired up there, but yeah, I'm going to Aiba Gutier as my Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, I mean, Baby Ngannou is a good pick as any. For me, I was between Saul Killed and the guy I'm about to announce right now, Kevin Vallejos. To me, Kevin Vallejos is the absolute Rookie of the Year, no question about it. I think he's just so put together. Kevin is a killer. I mean, he's the type of guy that is just ready straight out of the box. I got down here. He's like Buzz Lightyear, man. He comes right out of the box, ready for action. No breaking in needed. He's just so quick on the feet. He's got fast ass hands. He's got snappy, brutal leg kicks. And he's money in the clinch and in the grappling area too. So that's the guy that just came in the UFC. He doesn't need that, first loss in the first few fights to really prove himself. And he's just already proved himself at such a spectacular pace and strong competition as a rookie. Beating Giga Chikadze, who's a pretty solid fighter. I know years ago when he first came on the scene, people were like, oh, shit, this guy might be, a very big problem. And he's had the career he's had. But, to be a rookie and beat a guy like that in the way that he did, I think is spectacular. And I think he's just so damn good. The reason I went over with him over Saul Killed, Saul Killed's obviously had the flashier and more exciting year. But Vallejos is just a guy that I can so see fighting for a title as early as, the end of next year, if not beginning of 2027, or I guess early this year, if not the beginning of next year. I think he's on a very quick pace at the top of that division, and I think there's very few guys that can stop him. So I got Kevin Vallejos, man.
Yeah, Son, as did I. I won't touch on it too much. I will just say how impressive his fights on the Contender Series the first time against Gene Silva. Horrible match to get when you're trying to get a contract for the Contender Series. Goes back down to the regional scene, wins 2 more times, wins again, wins his fight for his second, or wins his fight on the Contender Series, his second fight on the Contender Series, and then starts the year off with Sungwoo Choi for his UFC debut, and then for his 3rd fight in the UFC, going undefeated this year, now ranked 13 in the featherweight division, calling for that Gene Silva rematch, which I think everyone wants to see. I'm hoping that gets done this year, depending on what Gene Silva does in his next fight, but very much looking forward to it.
Yeah, Kevin Vallejos is the absolute man. Also took round 1 off Gene Silva too in that Contender Series fight. So that'd be a fun one to see them run back. But I'm going to go a different direction with mine, and I'm going to go with Ethan Ewing, who made his debut late in the year, MSG. I think if Malcolm Wellmaker won that fight, the majority of this podcast would have Malcolm Wellmaker as their Rookie of the Year. I think that's kind of how the year was trending. The UFC loves him. They push that guy out everywhere. He was getting those quick round 1 knockouts. Then you have Ethan Ewing stepping in on 3 days notice, flying across the country from California out to New York, goes to MSG. No one knows who the fuck he is. I DM'd him actually, 2,500 followers. Now he has 30,000 just from that one singular fight, and just stole every single bit of momentum Malcolm Wellmaker had, and really just displayed such a well-rounded mixed martial arts game. And while he didn't have the resume of these other guys just due to when he got signed, I'm just literally kind of replacing Malcolm Wellmaker with him and adding on the win of Malcolm Wellmaker and making Ethan Ewing my 2025 Rookie of the Year. Now moving on to our last topic before we get into our 2026 champ predictions, event of the year. Son, you want to kick this one off?
Yeah, absolutely. I know that there's definitely a few sleeper cards out there, ones that we didn't expect to be exciting, and they were. I know there's the card that most of you guys have written down here, but for me, if you ask me what my single favorite card of 2025 was, it has to be UFC 320. I think, in my opinion, and I think in a lot of people's opinion, and maybe even factually, we had probably the most meaningful 3-fight stretch in UFC history in a single card. Starting it off, we had Khalil Rountree versus Jiri Prochazka, something that we've touched on before, but I'm going to get right back into real quick. It was straight fireworks. And like everybody saw, everybody thought that Jiri was out of it. He was really starting taking punches. It looked like he was tired in there. He pulled out a knockout out of the fire. It could not have been more characteristic of who Jiri Prochazka is. And it was also a title eliminator fight. The next guy up for the title fight was being decided in that fight. It cannot have been more high stakes for both of those guys. It cannot have been more exciting way for the fight to end, in a direction for it to go in, given the way that it started. Very meaningful first fight in this 3-fight stretch in that main card. And then after that, we had Merab versus Sandhagen. Highly technical fight, very good striking exchanges there. Sandhagen's a dog. Merab just outclassed him as he usually does, but went on to not towards the end of the year. But and it was Merab's 3rd title defense of the year. It's a very big milestone. It's the most title defenses in a year. He's tied for first, obviously. Couldn't get that 4th one. But obviously very, very important fight there. And then finally we had the light heavyweight title between Alex Pereira and Ankalaev, which really just proved how good Alex is. I think he we saw it happen. He put Ankalaev out on his ass in the first round after blocking a very low to the ground takedown. It's a very tough takedown to block. He was basically at his knees, and Alex just kind of put his hands down there and, like muscled his way out of it, and then got to that ground and pound. So he really shut all the haters up and retook everything that was rightfully his, the UFC light heavyweight titles. And then, getting off that main card a little bit, you also had a few sweet fights in the prelims. You had Gautier, like you mentioned before, Luke, Baby Ngannou winning, really proving how good he is. And then you have Patchy Mix really losing his claim to the UFC all in one card. To me, this was the clear-cut card of the year. Obviously, you guys have your own picks, but this is my favorite fight card to watch by far.
I like it, son. For me, this might come as a little bit of like recency bias, but I took the last card of the year, UFC 323, headlined by Petr Yan versus Merab Dvalishvili. Just outside of the historical implications of Merab chasing that 4th title defense in a year, I just felt like from start to finish, this card delivered on all aspects. Even if you look at the prelims, first fight, KO, ends by KO. Second fight, sub. Third fight, the one I touched on before, Ivo Berinchyk versus Ibo Aslan. Both guys just swinging out of their shoes. Fight ends in KO. Jalin Turner comes back out of retirement, KOs Edson Barbosa. Bruno Ferreira and Marvin Vettori put on a war that goes to decision. You think it's going to slow down a little bit? Fuck no. Faraz Ziem KOs Nazim Sadykhov. Macy Barber does her thing, puts on a show, goes to war against Karine Silva, gets the nod. Chris Duncan versus Terrence McKinney. Round 1, sub, goes to Chris Duncan. Manuel Torres versus Grant Dawson. Round 1 KO, Manuel Torres. Jan Blachowicz and Bogdan Guskov have a close scrap, goes to a draw. Peyton Talbot retires Henry Cejudo. Tatsuro Taira might have just gotten, his next shot at the title. KOs Brandon Moreno in round 2. And then obviously we had the unfortunate circumstances of Joshua Van versus Alexandre Pantoja. And just when you thought that would kill the card, at the end of it, you get a Petr Yan masterclass against Merab Dvalishvili to end the year. And Yan finally completes that journey of getting his belt back after it got taken from him 2.5 years ago when he illegally kneed Aljamain Sterling. I just thought it was a nice touch at the end of the year. You get to see Yan come back as a champion, and the card pretty much from start to finish was just all bangers. So.
Yeah, last ESPN card too. So farewell. Yeah, I'm going. I actually just switched mine while we were talking. I saw that Zach had the same one as me. I'll let him take the floor for that card, but I'm going to go UFC 319, mainly just because we've given out a lot of awards to this card already. This is the card where Khamzat completely dominated DDP. I think obviously that wasn't that entertaining, but it did show like a show class of levels to it. And I think we really saw Khamzat finally reach his full potential. So that was entertaining to me. Obviously, boring fight, but to see a guy at that level is always impressive. And then we have the 2 spinning knockouts with Lerone Murphy against Aaron Pico and Carlos Prates against Geoff Neal. And that's really like we've given out awards for those 2 fights. So that's really what tipped me at the edge here. And then other than that, main card, we had the resurgence of Tim Elliott, and then a great fight between Michael Venom Page and Jared Cannonier. So I think just the main card, obviously the prelims weren't as entertaining as the cards you guys mentioned, but I think just that main card, the last 3 fights, the highlights we've gotten from those 3 fights, we've already obviously talked about. So I'm going to give UFC 319 as my card of the year.
Yeah, definitely. And I went with UFC 317, which I know you're also a fan of there, Luke.
Yeah.
But 317 from start to finish, even on the prelims, you had some bangers. You have, I mean, any McKinney fight on the prelims, banger. And then you have Delgado over Hyder Emil. That was a crazy knee. Didn't expect that. And then even RoboCop over Jack Hermanson. I don't know if anyone wanted to see that, but we all did. That was fucking nuts. And then just the main card, absolutely stacked. You have the prospect fight with Peyton Talbot over Felipe Lima. And then obviously, you have the Josh Van versus Brandon Royval fight of the year. Wasn't my fight of the year, but fight of the year, rightfully so. And then you have Pantoja winning his belt, and just the way in which Ilia Topuria put out Charles Oliveira to cap off the night was absolutely wild. So I had to go with UFC 317. I thought that was an absolute banger of a card, but there you go. Those are the Around the Octagon 2025 awards. And now moving on, 2026, we're going to speed run through each division, give you guys our predictions on who the champ is going to be by the end of the year. We'll start off with flyweight. Son, you want to kick this one off?
Yeah, I got Manel Kape, and this is only if on the contingency that Pantoja cannot heal and come back this year. I think if Pantoja makes it
he's
back,
coming back mid 26. He said he's training and everything. Nothing's broken, nothing's torn.
All right, perfect. So, as long as he can make a speedy recovery, then I'm back on Pantoja there. But if he cannot, I think Manel Kape's our guy. I kind of doubted him a little bit on his last fight, but I think he really proved me wrong and kind of got pushed all that doubt I had outside of my mind. I know he's been a little bit inactive due to an injury, but Manel Kape's the guy. And Josh Van's had issues, with those really strong power punchers, and really athletic guy and strong and fast guy like Manel Kape is bound to give Joshua Van, a young guy, some problems. He's got a lot to learn still. So I wouldn't doubt it if he lost his title so quick to a guy like Manel Kape.
But your prediction's still Pantoja, though, right, son?
Yeah, it all depends. I mean, there's stuff to see. If Pantoja is actually fully healthy, I haven't really seen him train at all. It kind of depends on how well Pantoja is. If Pantoja is kind of out of the picture, I like Manel Kape. Outside of Pantoja, it's Manel Kape.
Don't want to take up too much time here at all, but he is back in the gym. He is lifting, and he is like, I'm going to be ready come mid next year. So good to see it.
Give me that.
Yeah, for me, I'm going a little different route. I'm going with Tetsuo Taira. I think he's now the number 1 or the number 2 contender after Pantoja, obviously. And I know the UFC is eyeing something up in Japan for later down this year, which I'm sure they want Taira headlining. And I just don't see how that guy loses, with home court advantage. So give me Taira.
Yeah, I'm sticking with what I know to be true. I'm going Pantoja here. I think the injury only fired him up more. I know he's up there in age, but I think he has a couple more runs left in him. It's good to hear, Zach. I did not know he was back to training. Good to hear nothing's torn. So I think he gets his lick back here in 2026 in extraordinary fashion. And I agree. I don't think Joshua Van's ready to go on a long defense. So I think a lot of guys that we are touching on have the ability to beat him and, be crowned champ of this division.
Yeah, I'm going to go Pantoja as well. I'm not going to harp on this for too long. I just think he gets the belt back, fights once this year, and that's probably it. Maybe he squeezes in a second one at the end of the year, depending on when he comes back. But I know right now they're saying targeting mid-year towards potentially the beginning of Q3. So he could just win one, snag that, and that'll be it for 2025. But I'm also going to stick with Alexandre Pantoja. Now moving on to the bantamweight division. Ryan, who is your pick to be the bantamweight champ by the end of next year?
Yeah, now that he has it again, I don't think he's ever letting it go. I'm taking Petr Yan to retain the title by the end of next year. I'm just looking at competition-wise outside of a couple guys like maybe Umar Nurmagomedov. Sean O'Malley, I thought, didn't win that fight the first time they fought if they ever do run that rematch back, but he's beat most of the top guys in that division. I think he can continue doing that.
Yeah, I'm with you, Ryan. I'm going Yan. I think it's a little bit of recency bias, and like I touched on that storybook, get the belt back, and I think he is hit another level. And obviously, we know once you get the champ, the confidence does give you another boost. It's like Madden with the morale boost. So I think that he fully has that in 2026, and I don't see him fighting too much, maybe 2 fights. And I really don't. I think he beats everyone but Merab. And I think right now he has the playbook to beat Merab. So I see us having this conversation, him being the champ next year.
Yeah, for me, I got Merab. I think he's getting his lick back here. I've seen him hang out a lot more with Ilia Topuria, which I think is just devastating for everybody in that division. If he can pick up a thing or two from Ilia, I think everybody's in big trouble. A guy that I can see right now beating Yan is Umar Nurmagomedov, which I'm sure, Zach, you're going to touch on. But yeah, Merab's it for me, man. And Merab's a guy that we've seen be able to hold off that steamroll of Umar Nurmagomedov. I don't know if Yan can do that, although his takedown defense is killer, as we saw against Merab. I think Umar could beat him straight up right now. So I think Merab's getting that lick back. I think he's getting that belt back, and I think he's absolutely fired up. I mean, I think he's excited to be in there. I think he's definitely feeling it after this last fight, and he's not happy with his performance. Being that it was his 4th fight of the year, we like to say that he has an unlimited gas tank, but at some point your body gives. So I think Merab, first fight in, going to be a title fight. I think he gets that back.
Yeah, you are correct, son. I am going to go with Umar Nurmagomedov to be my bantamweight champ by the end of 2026. Merab's old, man. He's 36, but he's going to be 37 by the end of next year, if I'm not mistaken. And Umar's 29, kind of going up towards his peak. Merab, it's tough. And I do think that Umar Nurmagomedov can outpoint Petr Yan. He's not going to put him away, but just with his pressure and his scrambling ability, I think he can just kind of be in control for a lot of that fight. But I do think Umar is a tiny bit shinny, and I think Petr Yan could potentially put away Umar Nurmagomedov. That'd be an absolutely insane fight. I would love to see it. I would lean Umar, and I do have him being the bantamweight champ, but this division's really a fucking toss-up. All 3 of those guys, and you have Sugar potentially in the mix. Thing is, I could see Sugar getting the belt. I don't know if I could see him finishing with the belt. That's the thing that's tough. Can you win 2? I don't
Yan
know,
wants the Sugar rematch.
Yeah, and I think Sugar, that's a
saying.
decent matchup for Sugar. I'd favor Yan, but that's a decent matchup. He could win that, but does he finish 26?
Gotta get through Sonya Dong first.
That's very true, very true. But I am going to go with Umar Nurmagomedov. And moving on to the featherweight division, Luke, who is your prediction for the champ by the end of 2026?
Yeah, maybe while I was doing the research, I was really, reliving the Aaron Pico knockout. I'm going Lerone Murphy. I definitely think some dominoes have to fall in his direction for him to even get the title shot. I think when he won that fight, everything else was really much in play for maybe him to jump the line a little bit. Obviously, we don't see that happening. He might have to get one more win. But other than really Volk and Diego Lopez, I think he's the best in this division. Obviously, you got Mosvar in there, who's kind of a one-trick pony. But I think Lerone Murphy, with his ability and his punching ability and his overall, he's just an overall well-rounded fighter. He also is 34, so I do think the UFC does see that and maybe have a UK card and have him on it. Fight for a title. We'll see. But I'm a huge fan of Lerone Murphy. I think his like I said, his game is so well rounded. He really could. It's toss up with any of the guys above him in this division. So I'm taking a little bit of a long shot here. I'm going Lerone Murphy.
Yeah, I don't hate that pick at all, Luke. I did go a different direction. I got Diego Lopez. As you guys probably heard by now, me and Ryan are big fans of Diego Lopez. We've been watching since that first fight. But yeah, I think for me, when you think about ending the year as the champion, I don't think it's going to be Volkanovski, simply on the reason I think he will retire this year. I might be wrong, but I just got that feeling. I think he's going to be gone before the end of the year, and somebody else is going to be that champion. It could be as soon as that next fight. If Diego Lopez can get the nod there, maybe get a finish. And from there, I do see everybody having a tough time fighting Diego Lopez. Now, I did have a slash somebody else here just in case the scheduling works out, because I think it's going to be tight given his ranking. But Kevin Vallejos is another guy to watch out for. If he can pull a Joshua Van and beat some guys, step in on short notice and win, we could be talking about a Kevin Vallejos title fight this year. That's another guy that I think can also even give Diego Lopez some issues. He's very solid on the feet and on the ground, two places where Diego Lopez is also very solid in. But Vallejo's kind of has a little bit of more stocky build. So I'd be very excited to see that fight go down. But as it stands now, I got Diego Lopez.
Yeah, son, I'm right there with you. I have Diego Lopez as well. I think he goes out, in the next few weeks and plays spoiler out in Sydney, Australia. And then in terms of who he fights next, it'll probably be Movsar Evloev for me. And I think with the full training camp, he can get that loss back on his record. And then we'll see what happens with the rest of the year. But I think, like you said, he gives a lot of people in that division problems. So I'm going Diego Lopez. Bring it home.
Yo, boys, did you guys see it just got reported that Jiri Prochazka versus Carlos Ulberg is in the works for UFC 327 for the vacant light heavyweight title?
Ooh,
No.
if that's
Not
true,
not confirmed yet, but West Till Death just put it out, and I saw a few people on Twitter posting about it. So that could have some big implications for this talk we're having right now. But yeah, I'll give my featherweight prediction here. I have Movsar Evloev, however the fuck you want to say it. I tried there, but I think Movsar, while he is a one-trick pony, I think that trick might just be enough to get him the belt. If you were to rematch against Diego Lopez, I could see the fight going kind of similarly to how the last one did, where Diego really is the one pushing the danger and the threatening positions, whereas Movsar Evloev is somehow just like winning rounds based off control and shit. Very boring. Against Aaron Pico, against Lerone Murphy, I can see the fight being similar, him having like a similar-ish game plan as Aaron Pico, minus the fact of just bum rushing in and getting elbowed to the head, but he'll look to utilize his wrestling there. I don't see him beating Volkanovski, but I also don't see Volkanovski holding the belt for the whole year, so I'm going to give the nod to Movsar Evloev there. Now, moving on to the lightweight division. San, you want to kick us off? I think we're all on the same page here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to try and speak for us all here. I think I see that we all have him. Lightweight has to be Ilia Topuria. I mean, you talk about boogeyman, you talk about a guy that nobody wants to fight. It's Ilia. I mean, this guy will put you out cold. He's, got Carlos Prates, power with Joshua Van's speed. It's insane. This guy is just an absolute unicorn, a one-of-one fighter that you only get to see every once in a while. Really nothing much to say about him. I mean, his name, his performances all speak for themselves. This guy is absolutely killer. He just knocks people out on a whim whenever he wants to. And also apparently walks out of grappling attempts at will too. You saw Charles try and get a heel hook in there during their fight in that first round. It didn't last 5 seconds. Charles was holding on for dear life and he just pulled his leg out. I mean, I don't know. I mean, how can you explain that? Charles Oliveira, the best, jiu-jitsu guy on the roster, and he just gets a heel hook walked out on by a guy like Ilia Topuria. So I really hope they make that Islam Makhachev fight. I really hope they just make him fight. I don't care who it is. You can put a coughing baby in there and I'd be there to watch it. Ilia Topuria, man, he is the guy.
That was a grim ending to that one, son.
Nah, I was just thinking of, I mean, you can put whatever you want. Like, I don't care what it is. Like you that guy, he's the guy, man. He's exciting.
Yeah, clean sweep. Sorry, Luke. Go on.
Yeah, just going to add one thing. Obviously, on the same side, I only think he fights once in 2026, and I think it's at lightweight, not against Islam, because of the layoff and the interim belt. I think they're going to make him fight at this weight class and not go up. So I think it's a no-brainer. Because I was thinking maybe welterweight, but I don't think so with everything going on.
And the other thing is, man, Ilia's not crazy active, and like you said, he's not going to fight till mid-year, and there's really only one guy in that division that I think has a realistic shot of beating him, and that's Arman Tsarukyan. So if he's going to fight the winner of this interim belt, and you're telling me he's going to fight once this year, and it's against either Justin Gaethje or Paddy Pimblett, yeah, chances are he's going to walk out at the end of the year with that belt. Pretty wild now. Yeah, right. I mean, Ilia Topuria, lightweight king, come the end of 2026. Now moving on to the welterweight division. This one we might have a little bit of diversity here. Luke, do you want to kick us off? Who is your welterweight champ?
Yeah, I'm going my male fighter of the year. I'm going Islam here. Just what I saw against JDM, who I think is probably the best striker overall, technical striker in that division, and he just could not get off the canvas. I don't think anyone in this division has an answer for Islam. I think he's going to continue to run through, continue to get more comfortable at that weight. I don't think he's going back down. Why would you when you can walk around more comfortably, just be jacked all the time? So yeah, Islam's going to have the belt at the end of 2026, probably the end of 2027, until he wants to go up again. Son?
Oh shit! Fuck, my bad. I was just thinking about. I was looking at these next few rankings, and I was trying to think of the spiel I was going to give you guys. But how about this spiel? I went in a completely different direction. Maybe not completely different, but I do think it'd be an ironic ending to the year. I got Carlos Prates winning the belt by the end of that year, and I got him holding it, man. Morales is and Islam Makhachev are two guys that are obviously very, very dangerous to him. But I think the irony in a guy like Carlos Prates that smokes, drinks, parties, does all these things that Islam Makhachev refuses to do, taking that belt, I think that would just be the most ironic and most storytelling, funny ending of 2026. And I think I would love it. Nothing more than having another Brazilian hold the belt. And I absolutely love Carlos Prates. That guy's the man. I've already talked about him, way too many times. I love those guys. I love the fighting nerds, but Carlos Prates, man, he is my favorite by far. That guy's sweet. And I think him winning the welterweight belt would be absolute, comedy. And I think he definitely put up some bangers.
I don't mean to interject here, son, but your reason to go, I want Prates because he's awesome. I love the fighting nerds, and it would be really funny because he drinks and Islam doesn't. Bang.
Yeah, well, he's also fucking sick, dude. I mean, like Islam Makhachev, that's a guy that's been touched. Like he gets hit, dude. He's not a guy that
not much, dude. He's fucking hard to hit, dude. He's hard to hit.
You get a lengthy guy like Carlos Prates. Islam already moved up. He's got shorter arms than the rest of them. You got a guy like Carlos Prates. You only need one fucking shot, dude. He's the man. You only need one shot. And I just think also the irony of being a guy that is everything Islam stands against. I just think it'd be like crazy ironic. And I think, it just makes sense for some reason in my mind. It's just a UFC storyline waiting to happen.
Yeah. So, I was split between Carlos Prates and Morales, but I ended up selling on Morales just because I think he's closer to fighting for the title than Carlos Prates is right now. And I think I do really believe that Islam probably holds that belt by the end of the year. But the one thing that you can't really account for is just getting caught in power. And the only two guys that really have that power to catch you with the strike and put you out, with one or two in that division are Carlos Prates and Michael Morales. So if they want to play spoiler this year, if they somehow end up getting to play spoiler, those are the two that cross my mind as being able to beat Islam. And it's not by staying on the feet or, like getting up after takedowns. And if they fight, it's either going to go one of two ways. It's a knockout or Islam, just drags them out and submits them or rides them out for 5 rounds. But I think they have the best chance to do it.
Yeah, I'm going to go Islam Makhachev. I think, honestly, he just runs circles around this whole division. I think just either look at it and you have some average or some good grappler who's not as good of a grappler and they'll get dominated there, or you have some striker that's going to get dominated in the grappling, or you have Michael Morales who thinks he's both and then still just gets dominated in the grappling. And that's kind of what I see him doing with the whole division and retaining that belt until, like Luke said, he really wants to retire or contest for middleweight if Khamzat were to move up and someone's holding that belt. That's a good matchup maybe. But moving on to middleweight, speaking of Khamzat Chimaev, fellas, we all riding Khamzat here or what?
Yeah.
Yo, pause. Luke, you want to take the floor and give a little reasoning here, or Ryan, or should we just move on to light heavyweight?
Yeah, I think you just take a look at the rankings. Like he already beat DDP. He's going to beat Nasruddin. He's going to beat Strickland. Fluffy maybe, but probably beats Fluffy. Beats Brendan Allen. Beats Israel. Beats Kaio. Beats RDR. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's also
the only way in which he's not.
He's also going to fight once this year.
Yeah, he's going to fight once this year. The only way he's not the middleweight champ is if he actually vacates his belt to move up to light heavyweight, given that they don't allow people to be 2 division champs anymore, which he has talked about doing. That's the only way I see him not holding that belt, because Jesus Christ, there's no way any of these guys really fucking hang in there with Khamzat Chimaev.
Yeah, it's also not like all these 7 guys are going to fight him. One of these guys is going to get a lottery ticket to fight for it and, get dragged out to a 5-round decision. So I think just activity is a big part of it. They got one shot to take the belt away from him this year.
Definitely. And let's move on. Light heavyweight. San, you want to kick this one off?
Yeah, and I'm, I could not have been more ecstatic with your breaking news in the middle of this podcast, in the middle of these picks. Light heavyweight, I got Jiri Prochazka because I have been thinking that Alex Pereira would move up to heavyweight and obviously have to vacate that belt, go for that third triple champ status. And I got Jiri Prochazka winning. The only guys he's ever lost to in light heavyweight is Alex Pereira, and he's done that twice. And, with his boogeyman, with his Achilles heel moving up to heavyweight, I don't see him losing anybody else. Carlos Ulberg, probably the second guy in line there. You also have Magomed Ankalaev. But I got Jiri Prochazka beating both those guys, and I think he holds that. He takes that belt and he holds it. If Alex does move up, you get an Ulberg Jiri Prochazka fight. I think Jiri takes that one, and then maybe you sneak in another fight towards the end of the year between him and Ankalaev or whoever the hell they want to throw in there. I think Jiri just, by the way of the samurai, gets it done. Keeps that belt for the rest of the year and closes off 2026 as the light heavyweight champion.
Yeah, so before Zach broke that news, I did have Alex Pereira, and I guess there's still a possibility if he goes and fights at the White House or whatever the hell, loses and then decides to come back down to light heavyweight. But I don't see that happening. So I think I'm just going to switch my pick, and I'll just I won't repeat all of San's reasons, but I like Jiri Prochazka, especially if he's fighting Carlos Ulberg for the vacant belt. I think the next one in line would be Magomed Ankalaev. I think he beats Magomed, and he only has to fight twice, maybe 3 times, but he's beat pretty much everyone else at the top of that division outside of Alex Pereira and Magomed Ankalaev, which I think he could get the nod over. So give me Jiri Prochazka.
Yeah, I'm going to stick with my Alex Pereira pick just because dude is active. It's not like he doesn't fight a lot. Obviously, going up, he's going to have to put on some weight. But I think this will lead into my next pick, but I think he may lose that heavyweight fight if it's against who I think it is. And then I think we could see him towards the tail end of 2026. I don't think he fights for anything but a title at this weight class. So I'm still going to stick with Alex Pereira. I think someone else obviously has the belt, maybe gets turned over a couple times this year. And we'll be talking, maybe an MSG card. Alex Pereira makes his return to light heavyweight and reclaims his gold. So I'm going Alex Pereira.
I think some people that are listening to this are probably like, fuck that Zach guy, because I picked Umar Nurmagomedov, Movsar Evloev, and now I'm going to pick Magomed Ankalaev. Yeah.
Jeez, and Islam.
You gotta
Islam and Khamzat Chimaev. Like, it's, yeah, dude, I'm moving out to the Caucasus region and joining my fucking brethren out there. But I kind of had the hunch of Alex Pereira moving up as well to heavyweight. And with that, I was really between Magomed Ankalaev and Jiri Prochazka. I do think Ank is pretty sound defensively striking, and I think just being able to be on the front foot, kind of control the octagon, control when you're in the clinch and when you're not, which Magomed Ankalaev will be able to do, will kind of be enough to get him that nod, similar to that first Poatan fight. But goddamn, I would love for Jiri Prochazka to be the champ by end of the 2026. That'd be absolutely awesome. Now, moving on to the heavyweight division. This is a fun one, and this is one that I really wanted to talk about. But before I do, Ryan, I'm going to let you kick this one off.
Yeah, so when I originally wrote this, I had Tom Aspinall in that slot. But now that he's getting double eye surgery this year, I don't know if they strip him of his title. And I know he's not in the good graces of the UFC, so he might have to fight once or twice before, getting his belt back, which I think is absolute fucking bullshit. So outside of that, with the breaking news, give me Alex Pereira to hold the heavyweight strap and make UFC history, being the first guy to win, belts in 3 different weight classes. I love when guys go up and make history, and if anyone can do it, it's Alex Pereira. I guess that also depends on who he fights. If he fights John Jones, might be fucked, but we'll see, man. If anyone can get it done, it well possibly could be Alex Pereira. So give me Alex Pereira as the heavyweight champion of the world come the end of 2026.
Yeah, Ryan, I'm glad you hit on that point. Obviously, huge Alex fan. Probably my second favorite fighter behind the GOAT, Max Holloway. But the actual GOAT, I think, is who Alex Pereira will be fighting. I think they'll be fighting on the White House lawn. And I think John Jones is going to be the champ because he's going to fight one time in 2026. And then he's going to play, hooky with, being in the division, not being in the division, retiring. So I think they're not going to get another heavyweight title fight other than this one that's probably going to happen between Pereira and John Jones with the breaking news. And I think John Jones is he's just too good, man. He's not going to get hit. He's going to take him down. I love Alex, and I would be very happy if he knocks out John Jones. I just can't see it happening right now, at least. Obviously, we'll have to see what their training camps look like. But I'm going John Jones to have the strap for the heavyweights in 2026.
Yeah, following up on my Jiri Prochazka light heavyweight champion by the end of the year, I do have Alex holding that strap by the end of the year. And I just want this for the record. I had this before the breaking news.
You did.
That's the storyline I had in my mind. That's what happens in my mind. And you just look at the heavyweight division, it's just very thin. And Alex Pereira is a guy that holds his weight very well. He looks very good in there. By the time he's in the cage, at light heavyweight and even at middleweight, he was pushing, 220, 230 every time he's in that cage. And that's, exactly what he's going to be at in heavyweight, if not bigger, given that he's going to get some weight on him. So I think we're going to see a true size heavyweight Alex Pereira, just the final form of this absolute beast out of the Amazon. Nothing would make me happier than seeing this guy hold that third strap, man. I absolutely love the guy. He's from my region in Brazil, my city where I was born. I love the guy. Watching his story, seeing him come out of glory, talking shit, Adesanya, and then comes in, takes his strap, moves up, does something that he couldn't do, holds the strap there, has a couple defenses, has some great storylines, and now, if he finally does make the move to heavyweight and we see, a fully fleshed out Alex Pereira in his full form with full power, I think it's going to be a sight to behold, man. I'm gushing over this guy right now, but that's how big of a fan I am of him. I really hope he's the heavyweight champ by the end of the year.
Yeah, and for my heavyweight champ by the end of 2026, I'm going with a guy who is not currently on the UFC roster and the man who is the hottest prospect in all of mixed martial arts. I'm going with Gable Steveson. This guy, if he was in the UFC right now, he's in the top 5. There's not a doubt in my mind. And he might – it's actually ridiculous how thin this heavyweight division is. And he has a plan to go and fight 2 times before the White House card. He's going to debut on the White House card as the Olympic champ for America. He's going to debut on the White House card, and they're not going to throw him an unranked opponent, right? So he's going to debut against someone ranked. And then he's going to be 2 fights away from that belt. And he's a guy who's young, extremely active, coming from wrestling, which is an extremely active sport. You're competing frequently. He's not going to take much damage given his style. I could see him fighting on the White House in June. Then he can go and fight in September, October. And then John Jones said it. He goes, Gable Steveson will be the champ by the end of 2026. I'm picking up right where John Jones left off. I think whoever it is that's holding that belt, Gable Steveson is a nightmare of a matchup waiting, and the whole heavyweight division should be on notice because this guy is going to fucking take over. And I'm very excited for it. If you even watch his dirty boxing, you see the hands he has. You see how explosive he is. He's stronger than probably anyone in that division already, more explosive than anyone in that division, more athletic than anyone in that division. And let's not forget, he's an Olympic gold medalist wrestler. Yeah, dude, I think the heavyweight division is absolutely done for once Gable Steveson gets signed to the UFC. Now moving on to the women's side of things. At least we only got 3 left, fellas, so we're almost out of here. But women's strawweight, I think you guys are all in the same boat here. Ryan, I'll let you talk this one through a little bit.
I mean, yeah, she was absolutely dominant before she went up to fight Valentina Shevchenko, and I think as soon as she goes back down, she'll continue that streak of dominance. I'm going with Zhang Weili to hold the belt for women's strawweight by the end of next year.
Yep, not much to add. Watch out, Mackenzie Dern. The boogie woman's coming.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. As much as I'd love Dern to keep that belt, Zhang Weili, man, strawweight, that's her class, and she is the man at that weight class. So give me Zhang, man. I think she gets right back into stride.
She's the man at that weight class. It's fucking
she hilarious. Is. Hey, Zhang Weili is the man. Zhang Weili's the
Zhang Weili is the man, dude. But I actually went with Tatiana Suarez, and my sole reasoning was just because I don't know if the weight cuts are going to become too much for Zhang Weili, but I've heard some of her coaches talk about how they did get a bit grueling, and that's why she did kind of move up and contest Valentina. So I'm just wondering if at some point she's just going to be like, do I still want to keep on doing this and kind of hang them up? And if she does, I do think Tatiana Suarez is the next best in that division. But if Zhang Weili does finish out the year, chances are it will be her because she is the man of that division, as Son said. I like that.
The man.
Now moving on to the women's flyweight division. Luke, I'll let you kick this one off. Who is your champ by the end of 2026?
Jersey girl, baby. I'm going Aaron Blanchfield. Obviously, hasn't had the best, I think she won her last two. I don't have it up right now. But then she lost to Farrow before that. I think I'm pronouncing that right. So the number one contender at the weight class. I think maybe Shevchenko just starts getting a little bit older. I mean, I said that the Weili fight did not happen. She honestly has looked great. But I wanted to go a little bit against the grain. Thought I'd give props to the Jersey girl, fights out of North Jersey. So I think Blanchfield has a very good chance of getting a title shot this year, and I hope she just makes the most of it. She obviously poses a lot of problems with her grappling. We saw that in her last fight against Tracy Cortez. So you never know. I'm taking Erin Blanchfield.
Yeah, I'm going right back to the flyweight goat, Valentina Shevchenko, man. Give me her. I think she just keeps it rolling. I mean, she just wins. What can you say? I mean, we've talked about her so many times on this podcast alone already. She is another one that she's just absolutely the man of the flyweight division. And I think she's just going to keep it rolling, man. She's just so good. She's so good on the feet. She obviously has shown some very strong grappling against Weili as well. And I think it just all comes down to her game plan. She's so smart. She's got a very good team behind her. And age seems to not affect women as much as it does men in the UFC, which 100%. We've noted a few times. So I think Shevchenko is going to keep rolling. Maybe in 2 years, we'll see the problems of her age. But yeah, give me Shevchenko.
Yeah, for this one, I'm going with Natalia Silva. She asked me the next in line to fight Valentina Shevchenko for the belt. And, neither of the two are very active in terms of fights per year. And she's on a 7-fight win streak. She's the number 4 ranked pound for pound in the women's rankings. She's above Mackenzie Dern, and she could do it all. She's faced every single type of women's fighter outside of obviously your goats, your Zhang Weili's, your Valentina Shevchenko's. But she looks like that every time she's out there. Most of the fights go to decision, but very slick striker on the feet. Doesn't get taken down. Has very good takedown defense and mixes it up with the Taekwondo style. So. Very exciting to look out for. I think they fight next probably come March or April, and maybe she fights one time after that. And if she can just get past that second opponent, I think she'll finish the year with the belt.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the woman's GOAT, Valentina Shevchenko. As long as she doesn't retire, I think she retains that belt. And enough said. Let's move on. Women's bantamweight division. Luke, I'll let you kick this one off. Or did you kick off the last one? Want to kick this one off?
The last. Sure.
Go ahead.
I'm going the lioness, the GOAT of this division, the bantamweight division. Amanda Nunes coming out of retirement to face Kayla Harrison, a fight that probably should have been made 5 years ago. We're going to get it this year. Going to be great. Amanda Nunes is first going to take her tune-up fight against Juliana Pena. Going to win that, and then she's going to fight Kayla Harrison for the belt. That's a joke. She's not going to fight Pena again, but that would be fun to see. I think Kayla Harrison posed a lot of threats. But I think Amanda Nunes has just done this, man. She's been there. She's the man of the division. Let's go.
She is. I'm glad that stuck. I don't think anybody's more deserving of that name than Amanda Nunes. She is absolutely the man of women's fighting. She's the GOAT of women's fighting. I don't think there's any debate there. She's just so damn good. She can put anybody out. She can, knock you out. She's so well-rounded. She can put you out on the ground. I did worry that her age would come in the question. I know she's a mom, but then I remembered she's married to a woman. So pregnancy is not an issue there. Body's going to hold up. Give me Amanda Nunes. I think she's going to absolutely outclass Kayla Harrison. Show her the real fucking levels. You can't just outmuscle the lioness.
Yeah, I think they fight in 3 weeks. So I think between all of us, whoever wins that holds the belt for the entirety of 2026. I'm going the opposite route. I'm going Kayla Harrison. For me, it's just with that 2.5-year-long layoff, it does put some worries in my mind. I know she's the GOAT of women's fighting, but 2.5 years is a long time. She retired at 35. She's 37. Kayla Harrison's no spring chicken either, but she's at least active, and I just take the activity there.
Sorry, boys, that was on me.
You got me with spring chicken, bro. Oh, man. I'm sorry. No, you're not. You're not wrong. Kayla Harrison ain't no spring chicken, but dude, Amanda Nunes 2.5-year-long layoff. That is a long time, and I got to go with the other man of the division, Kayla Harrison. I think she is an absolute unit. I think she'll be able to decide where this fight is taking place. If she wants to go to the ground, I think she can get Amanda Nunes to the ground. I think this fight is for the battle of the women's GOAT, even though I still kind of think it's Valentina regardless, but beside the point, they're going out here battling for the title of the women's GOAT. I do favor Kayla Harrison in that matchup as of right now. Still got to kind of dive back into the Lioness because it's been weird. I don't think we've talked about her as a podcast because she retired before we started, which is pretty crazy actually. So I do have Kayla Harrison though, and that is all we have for today. Those are our champs for 2026. Thank you all for listening. Drop a comment, drop a like. It's all extremely appreciated. Boys, it was great talking some ball today with you all, and hopefully we'll be back soon.